Good evening. Let's call our special meeting to order, and I'll ask the treasurer to call the roll.
President Baker.
Present.
Mr. Brown.
Here.
Vice President Cole.
Here.
Ms. Gibbs.
Ms. Gibbs.
Here.
Ms. Hudson.
Here.
Mr. Peretti.
Here.
And Ms. Reyes.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. And if no one objects, we'll dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance this evening, since we've already said it once. Is there a motion that we adopt the agenda as it's presented and is before you?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
Who seconded that, please? I'm sorry. Mr. Peretti. Thank you. President Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Vice President Cole.
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs.
Yes.
Ms. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Peretti.
Yes.
Ms. Reyes.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. I know it's a long day and I do appreciate it. We're here for one reason, as you know, and that's to discuss our superintendent search. And what I'd like to do is start with a report from the committee that reviewed the submissions from outside legal counsel. And I want to thank board members Hudson and Brown and Vice President Cole for reviewing all the submissions and bringing to the board this evening 3 finalists. And so which one of you from the committee would like to report on that and guide us through the process?
I'm happy to defer to Board Member Hudson.
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead.
Vice President Cole. So we reviewed, the 3 of us reviewed the responses. We had 7, I think.
Yeah.
And they were all outstanding, so the board can be assured that there's a lot of local talent that was willing to represent us, so that was good. We identified the top 3. So we'll hear from the Bricker and Eckler firm, Crab, Brown, and James, and the Taft firm. And each one, they have various levels of expertise, and so I think we'll let them, I would suggest we let them tell us about themselves, tell us about their teams, and certainly about their proposed fee arrangements. And then it'll provide an opportunity for us to ask any quick questions, but then also then we can discuss it after that.
Okay, thank you. If I can add to that, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
As a part of our discussion, we kind of categorized
Sure.
various criteria by which we looked at and evaluated these firms. Everything from their experience with, of course, education, their experience with employment law, their experience, their fee structure was something that we wanted to look at. There were several other criteria, and we did share that in an email with the rest of the board. So we want you to know that we had rich discussion, but made very deliberate intent decision on who the 3 finalists were going to be.
And in which order should we see them?
I'd like to start with Bricker and Eckler, if that's okay with you. They're in the room.
All right, very good. If you wouldn't mind, please approach the table, Bricker and Eckler, and please sit here to my right.
Just slide one more chair.
Slide down a little bit.
Mr. Treasurer.
We'll make
So they
it.
don't
We've got it.
pressure- No pressure
We all
of
got it.
service otherwise.
Oh, you gonna join us? All right.
Right beside you.
Bill, they're bringing me to the table. All right. Now there's 5.
There you go.
Thank you very much for being here this evening. We appreciate it. And the floor is yours, and I believe the committee indicated to you that you would have about half an hour. Is that right? Okay, very good. You may begin.
Well, thank you very much, President Baker, Vice President Cole, members of the board. My name is Chris Slagle. I'm a partner at the Bricker and Eckler Law Firm here in Columbus. It's a real privilege for us to be here with you this evening. Late in the evening, after a few storms that have come through, so maybe the last place that lawyers want to be is at the end of an agenda on a late night. So we'll try to work through our comments as quickly as we can. We do want to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask us questions of our team. And we're just really humbled and privileged at the opportunity to be here. I was speaking with our leadership tonight before I came over, and so on behalf of our managing partner, Jim Flynn, and my fellow members on the executive committee where I serve, we've appreciated the very long relationship that we've had with the Columbus Public Schools since I think dating back to around 1980 in various capacities, and so it's a privilege for us to be considered to help you work through an important public process as you look to find a new superintendent to help lead the kids of this community as they look to the future. And so we're really humbled and privileged to be a part of that process. My background, I lead our government affairs and public policy practice group. I do counsel from time to time public sector entities, including education clients, both at the primary, secondary level, but also in some at the college and university level on a variety of policy-related matters. I have two very, very talented colleagues here tonight, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a second, most of the two of whom you will be mostly familiar with, more so than me. Two of our team members are not here tonight, and so as I mentioned to Board Member Brown, the check that they're going to need to send to us after tonight is hefty, but Greg Listini, who's my partner in the Government Affairs Group and in the Public Sector Practice Group, unfortunately is in New York on business and couldn't be here. Maria Armstrong, another partner of mine who helps lead our public sector group, is on a more interesting trip, a vacation trip out of the country, a long planned vacation. And so Greg and Maria have really helped put together this proposal along with Rick and Nicole and are the primary leads for you as we work through your council efforts in this superintendent search. They couldn't be here tonight. Apologize for that. So unfortunately, you get me and Matt for a little bit of the evening, but the real experts in this process are our collective team at Bricker, really led by Nicole and Rick. And so I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to listen to them. You have our proposal that we put together. Look forward to working that through with you and certainly answering any questions that you have. But on behalf of the entire Bricker team and our public group, we're really humbled and privileged to be with you tonight. Matt, you want to start and then I'll kick it over to Nicole and Rick.
Well, thank you for having us here this evening. My name is Matt Kopich. I'm an associate at Bricker Neckler. I'm part of the Government Affairs Group with Chris and Greg and Maria. I also counseled public entities, local governments, school districts, along with Chris. Have experience in public records, open meeting laws, et cetera. So really hope to be an asset to the team of the subject matter experts and help out where I can. So.
Nicole, you guys ready?
Hi. Thank you for having us. I am Nicole Donofsky. I am an attorney in our education practice group. Bricker's Education Practice Group is the largest in the state, and we are a comprehensive full-service firm. So we answer a variety of questions from employment to labor to special ed. We also have the advantage of being able to pull on the strength of our other attorneys in our office, whether it be government relations, our public finance group, construction, or litigation as the needs for school districts arise. Specifically related to your superintendent search, we have expertise in the area of the Open Meetings Act, public records, and superintendent employment. With respect to the Open Meetings Act, we train board members. We provide day-to-day advice to boards and their administrative teams whenever questions arise. And then we also help remedy issues should issues occur, which happen. Mistakes happen, issues do happen to arise, and we look to remedy those and help boards move through sometimes difficult times. With respect to public records, we do provide similar service. We provide training, trying to be proactive. We give that proactive day-to-day advice. And we oftentimes, I would say almost on a daily basis, we are assisting a school district, whether it's reviewing a public records request or actually reviewing records to make sure that the appropriate records are provided and appropriate redactions of any confidential information are made. With respect to superintendent employment, we are familiar and advise on superintendent searches and processes. And we also advise whether we're drafting an agreement for a superintendent to be employed by the district or whether we're revising something that you're already using. And then we assist boards in evaluating superintendents, setting goals for superintendents. And if the need should ever arise, we are also available for non-renewal and termination procedures because those issues do arise from time to time. So we believe we are very well positioned to help you specifically in this matter, and we have the bench strength and depth to address issues as they arise and as your needs need to be met. Thank you.
My name is Rick Ross, and as I look around the table, you probably can guess I've been at this a long time, other than Treasurer Bahoric. I've been practicing law for 40 years, all of it in the public sector. I started in the Attorney General's office and then went into private practice, and for the last 30 years have been representing school districts and some colleges and universities around the state. As Nicole said, our practice is very broad. Clients call us daily with questions that we need to respond to. We're all very experienced. I think we can handle any of the issues that might come up as you go through your search. And I also believe truly that we can do it very efficiently for you. You don't have new people who need to look at the law and see what it says. You don't need to have a lot of research done. There's some issues that are obviously trickier than others, and you need a little bit more time to examine them. But I think one of the hallmarks that we have is we can do things efficiently and effectively for you.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Well, we're happy to answer any questions you have. There is a fair amount of information in our written proposal, and I believe we've responded to all the points that have been requested. But if you have any questions, we are open to.
Committee members? Mr. Vice President?
Yes, I do. Thank you so very much for the presentation. I appreciated the responses that you've given us. We see that you have a strong background. Let me ask about a superintendent search. How have you navigated the superintendent search process as relative to the Open Meetings Act when if there's a formal or informal meeting process for candidates? How do you advise a school district to meet with prospective candidates in a way that is in alignment with the law, but at the same time may address a situation that a candidate doesn't want to have their school district know that they're applying for a job with the district? How have you navigated those waters?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to understand that it's a Board of Education that's interviewing for superintendents. So anybody who wants to apply for the superintendent's job has to understand that you're a public body and certain things have to be done in public, and there's no escaping of it. Now, it is, and we believe that there's case law to support the notion that the board still can meet with individual applicants in executive session in order to review their background and their abilities, and that can be done in executive session, and their names don't have to be disclosed. But at some point, when you get down to having to make a formal decision, their names are going to come out. The second part of that is, there are two pieces of this. One is the open meeting statute, which I've just been referring to, but there's also the Public Records Act. When they submit materials to you, those are going to be public record. And I think any school person, any experienced administrator will understand that. And at the beginning of the process, you may be able to keep some confidentiality because obviously they don't want their current employer to know. And you can take steps to try to facilitate that, but at some point down the road, it's going to become public. Do you have anything to add to that, Nicole?
Thank you.
Board Member Hudson?
Thank you, President Baker. One question would be, I think as we set our calendar for the search and proceed, would you be able to have a team member available to participate with us in those meetings? I don't think you'd have to all be there in mass, but that's something that I think that we think is really important for this process.
Right, we recognized what your time frame would be,
Yes.
the expectation, and one of the things we pride ourselves in is being accessible. Essentially, we work 24/7. When the needs arise, we are prepared to be available.
Other questions?
Just
Yes, Mr.
to
Brown.
follow up, we wouldn't want you at our meeting en masse. You know, we too have public dollars that we're using to pay for this, and we want to keep things as economical and financially reasonable as we can. So we, obviously look to you for help in achieving that.
We're all taxpayers too, so we get the drift. And I think, you would only have one, it may not be the same person every time because of
Right.
schedules, but anybody who would send would be very experienced and can help you in whatever you need to do. And it probably would be Nicole or I or someone else from the education section. It also may depend on what you're doing that particular evening or day and what kind of expertise you need. But we can certainly satisfy that. And you could expect only one person, quite frankly.
Yeah,
Remember- I'm sorry.
Our goal, Mr. President, in putting together and Board Member Brown and our proposed staffing and our fee structure was to be as efficient as we can while being the best partner with the board that we can be. And so depending on what needs need to be met at a particular time, obviously we're all attractive folks, but we aren't all needed here at the same time. And so we can ramp up and ramp down given your expectations and what we need to do to meet what you're looking for at a particular time. It will likely be Nicole or Rick or some combination thereof. We have other folks that are experienced in other aspects of board searches, and so there may be a time where someone else may need to be there. Given the nature of our public sector practice, we are acutely aware of the need and the desire to be as mindful of taxpayer dollars as we can be, while still trying to be as responsive to our partner and our client on the board and what you're looking for in a particular area. So it'd be an ongoing conversation that we try to have on the front end and then an ongoing dialogue with you as we work through this process. So we are not interested in overstaffing something, but yet we are interested in giving you the best advice at a particular time that we can so that you can make the best decisions that you can as you're working through this process.
Thank you. Board Member Reyes?
So that's, I guess, my concern, making sure that I kind of walk through the expenses. Because I guess what I'd like to see in some of these where I think there's issues with the searches is that you may talk to different parties, and if you don't have all those parties in the room, you may get different answers on different days, or maybe there's a misinterpretation of answers. So as I was looking through your billing proposal, billing model, you had at least the first 3 or 4 meetings. You had meeting with ESC, meeting with the establishing protocols. Can you walk me through what you're seeing as can be done together versus one by one by one by one, and what things you think are going to be done in mass? And I don't know if we were clear to you as far as what exactly we needed the legal firms to do, because we have a lot of players here. We want to make sure, there's three players being paid. So I want to make sure that either we're clear here or we're clear on the onset, so that I can see a couple savings here.
It is important to set those parameters at the very beginning so we have a solid understanding of what you want and what you need. When this proposal was put together, it was our estimate in terms of things that appeared to be necessary. It is important that we all be on the same page and the various partners are on the same page moving forward in the appropriate direction. One of the things one of the things we need to understand is we would be the board's counsel. The board is the client. When we talk about the ESC staff and the mediator, those individuals are not the client. So one of the turning points is when do you have privilege? When are the conversations confidential? And when are they not? And we would need to make sure we all understand that. And it's the board's privilege, not an individual member, not the mediator, not an administrator's privilege. So it's the board as a whole. So we deal with boards all the time, and it is tricky getting everybody on the same page, moving the same direction, but that's where those candid conversations are very important. If you want a successful search and ultimately ending in the employment of a superintendent, we need to set those parameters so we know what the commonalities are, where the common interests are, so we can move forward in the best direction. We can make adjustments, we're flexible in terms of what you need. So what we've identified in the proposal, or what we think you need, or what this might look like, but we are very flexible. Certainly after having an initial meeting, we can make modifications.
Yeah, those steps aren't, I think we take our direction from you. If some of these steps aren't even necessary, we're just trying to figure out what you might need, and they may be eliminated. We may have suggestions of a different type of step that need to be taken, but we always take our direction from the board.
Ms. Hudson?
Thank you, President Baker. I wondered if maybe you could describe for the board, in the proposal has a blended hourly rate and what that means, and how you go about using that.
Attorneys in our firm charge a variety of rates. Some are much higher than public entities would probably expect, and some are lower. So Rick explained that our goal is to provide you services in an efficient manner, and also being sensitive to the fact that we are dealing with public entities. So when we looked at how to approach this, there may be some folks that we need to get their expertise as we move through this process, but where a high hourly rate wouldn't be as palatable for public entities. So we looked at those rates and tried to blended them to find a reasonable rate that hopefully you would find acceptable.
We didn't want to have folks that we thought you may need who have a significant level of expertise not be utilized because their rate was higher for a variety of reasons. Our lower timekeepers who we'll use on certain things may come up, but certainly the folks that have expertise to deal with some of these things, some of these items that we anticipate, who can work through issues fairly quickly because of the experience and the expertise that they have. They're not reinventing a process or a research project. We want to be able to use those folks. And so we tried to come to a rate that would fit between the two, especially for the significance of this project and the work going forward in the superintendent search, that we could bring the best team possible to the table to help you, to be your counsel without sacrificing experience for rate issues. We're sensitive to that issue. We do a lot of blended rate work with our public sector clients across the board, from counties to cities to townships, certainly to school districts. And there are some folks that do higher rate work for other private sector entities that have board counseling experience, that we didn't want to lose their ability to help provide guidance to you because they have a rate that's too high. And so that's why we tried to find a rate that we thought was reasonable in the middle, where we can still bring those folks to be assistance to you.
Other questions, colleagues? Mr. Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you for that response. A great deal of what we've been discussing is very proactive, right? It's advising. We got a letter 5 minutes before we walked into a board meeting from the Auditor of State, not a week in advance, not 5 minutes before we walked into a board meeting. One of the things I'm certainly interested in, and I'm speaking for myself, is your ability to defend the board as well. So as much as you have the ability to advise us, what are the ability to defend us should we confront these types of circumstances again? How does that fall into your blended rate? How does that whole process work in relation to us?
Rick and I have the fortune and experience, I suppose, of defending Columbus in litigation for years. Before we came to Bricker, we were at a small firm, and we have that litigation background. So one of the things we do is proactively try to avoid issues, but when those issues arise, we are able to either try to remedy them or if we need to, we have relationships with a number of administrative agencies to try to work through issues and avoid litigation and audits and things of that nature. But we are also equipped, either with our experience or sometimes we draw upon the other litigators in our firm when those needs arise. So again, we're flexible, we provide full service, and we can make adjustments as we need to.
You would find we probably have experience at all levels of the courts, common pleas, courts of appeals, the Supreme Court. You know, if you have access to a litigation database, look up Bricker Neckler. You'll see our attorneys are representing districts in public records cases, open meeting cases, and all those at all those levels.
You did say earlier we're taxpayers. LexisNexis is expensive.
Oh. Well, if you want to come over, well, I don't know if I can. I'm a lead when it comes to computers, but probably can find it.
We have about 8 or 9 minutes left if we want to limit ourselves to half an hour with this firm. Other questions? My colleagues, Board Member Reyes?
The only thing, I'm gonna be the person that's gonna be stuck on the money. Because I read the other stuff. And, you know, you have the background, you have the litigation, you've worked with the boards, when we're talking about flexibility, I think some of the other proposals gave 1 or 2 different types of billing models. One that might consist of a monthly charge. Is that something that if you were chosen, you'd be amicable to looking at? Because what if it could, my hope would be it'd be a little bit lower than the price tag that I'm seeing here.
Yeah, and I'll just say as an institution, we always try to get to yes. And so our goal is to try to provide the best value we can at a price that, from a compensation perspective, that makes sense both for you and for us. And so this is a proposal that we put together. I don't think that, speaking for the firm, that we would foreclose any option as we move into a proposal and a conversation and as we get into an engagement type of conversation. And so if there are structural issues that we need to work through, then let's work those through. Let's find a way to get to the right counsel with the right compensation system that works for both of us. This is a partnership, and we view ourselves as a partner with you in addition to being your counsel, and so it's got to make sense. We have to be able to make sure that we're working in a collective fashion and we're working cohesively, and so we're happy to do that. We do that in a lot of different ways for our corporate sector clients as well as our public sector clients. It starts with a conversation, so we know what the expectation is, we know what the limitations are, and we'll be as honest with you as we can as to how we can accomplish that goal to best meet your needs and to provide a compensation structure that we think makes sense for us. And that level of conversation is something that we're committed to with all of our clients, and we'd be committed to engaging in that conversation and continuing with you all at any point, any time.
And I truly do believe that we need to pay for good service, and that's what we're looking for. So I'm not saying that you go down to like $2,000, which I would appreciate. That's not what I'm saying, but a lot of times when we look at, when we hire firms, we have minimums and maximums.
Sure.
This is where we would take, because it does take a lot of time. It takes you away from other cases, other potential jobs. So I fully understand that. So usually we have that span, and I know the treasurer being in the room would tell us that you better not spend too much of the money. So I appreciate that.
You gotta do what you want.
Treasurer, Ms. Gibbs.
I'm a taxpayer too.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for being here. I have 2 quick questions for you. In your proposal, you're talking about your experience and your work, but we're not investing in the contract, we're investing in the relationship, and it's between us and the firm that's going to represent us. And so, can you tell me about a time that you had difficulty working with a board? Don't name them, but a time that you may have been at odds. How did you approach it, and what was your definition of success, of a successful resolution, and how did you get there?
I don't know, in my experience, it's not a board that's a problem. It's usually a board member or 2, and I'll give you an example. We were representing a school district board of education, a local board of education. The superintendent of that district was forced out, for lack of a better way of putting it, because of his lack of performance. So a deal was worked and he resigned. He then ran for the board and got on the board. And pardon my language, but he was just raising holy hell. I mean, we were I think he submitted like 30 public records requests in the course of 6 months. He was, it was a really bad situation. And the way you handle it is, he's entitled to certain things under the law. So that's what he gets. But we don't do anything more than what's required. So when he makes a request for records that he's not entitled to, he's told he can't have those. So eventually you just have to work with them. I mean, some are more difficult than others, but every board member has the right, certain rights, and they should be entitled to receive those rights. You know, one of the best, and this goes to the money too, one of the best things I have found that you can do with a client is tell them no. You know, they want to do something, and you just say, well, no, you can't do that. Here's why, and explain to them why. And then it's always up to you. I mean, you can do something different than what we advise you to do. But, you know, one of the best things you can do is tell a client no. And I think that's what you do if you have this is my words, rogue board member, or a couple of rogue board members. I really don't know that, I mean, maybe you have a different experience. I've never had an entire board that I've had a problem with.
All right, we're Columbus City.
Now, like Nicole said, we've represented you over the years,
Yeah,
and there,
as well.
I can remember Mr. Moss and Ivy Fetterstone and Jerry Doyle. They were just common people showing up at your meeting. So, you know, there are boards and there are difficult boards. But again, it was usually, there were a minority of members there, and they were entitled to certain things they're not.
And I would echo that. When it's never a completely smooth situation with the board. There's always a board member or two. You don't always need a 5-0 vote, or in your case 7-0. Or you might have disagreement among your board members, but our job is to educate you and make sure you're fully informed of risks and benefits, and then you make the decision and you have a vote. And as legal counsel, I respect everybody's vote, and then we see how things turn out at the end of the vote.
Thank you. Oh, I have one more. So why do you want to work with us? Why do you want to work with Columbus City Schools?
Personally, you're close. You ever go to a Board of Education meeting in Portsmouth, Ohio at 8 o'clock at night?
Camp Molly Long.
But no, obviously there are challenges, and you know, you want to get involved in challenging work. So the challenge is here, and you know, you want to be able to help clients out. At least that's my personal view. I get more satisfaction out of doing something that a client is really proud of and glad to have done than I am perhaps the monetary side of it, although the partners may feel differently about that. But you know, I think, you know, obviously you have a lot of very capable people on your Board of Education. You're making very difficult decisions. You're trying to make progress for all the students in your community, and I think we'd like to be part of that.
We're a part of this community too, and we have team members who live in this district and whose children are being educated in this district. And so Columbus is a very personal client base for us. And so we're representing the city on the crew litigation, working with the Columbus Board of Education on Superintendent Search to help kids that are team members in the schools that you all are overseeing is a very important and personal challenge for us. And if we can be a part of that, that's something that is meaningful for us. Since the founding of our firm in 1945, we've looked to give back where we can. That's why our public sector practice has been a strength and a hallmark since John Bricker founded our firm 70 plus years ago. And so working through those kinds of challenging and interesting and difficult from time to time public sector issues here in the city of Columbus and in the other places where we live and work is important to us. And so this is an important issue, confronting Central Ohio and confronting Columbus. It's a personal issue for our team members across the board, our lawyers and our staff who live and have their children who attend the schools in this district. And so if we can be a helpful part of helping you move this district forward. That is a very humbling privilege that we look forward to helping you with.
Very good. Well, we are at the 30-minute point, so I think at this time we'll thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much
very
for the
much.
opportunity. Appreciate it.
And we'll be in touch.
Okay, sounds great. If you have any questions, please let us know.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you.
No, that's fine, we'll see, I don't know, the next
All right,
holds.
committee, who would you like to have go next?
Crab Brown and James.
Crab, Brown, and James?
We're going to alphabetical order.
It looks like it.
Yes, sir.
I just figured whoever was in front of me.
Crab, Brown, and James, welcome. Thank you for being here.
evening, hello
Yes.
everyone.
Good evening.
How are you?
Have a seat at the table.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Well,
Well, let me start backwards. You know, the question you ask is, why do you do this, and why are we here? I've actually chaired 2 of your operational levies to raise money. I chaired the neighborhood development that created it. I advised the former president of the board, Stephanie Hightower, as we went through some very turbulent years with some very disgruntled board members and things. So I've been through the battle with this district. I've written a check for each one of your levies, so it's a personal investment. I know you, I know the district, I've advised numerous superintendents over the years, some better than others. So this is Chris Green, associate of our law firm, I'm Larry James, Crab Brown James, managing partner, and I'm the person you will get. I'm the person you will hold accountable, I'm the person that will be responsible, and I'm the person that will be a part of what you've done. I've had 2 prior searches already. I actually chaired the superintendent search for the State Highway Patrol. I chaired the dean's search at Kenyon College of Admissions. I've been on the board there for 7 years. I've worked with the Ohio State University. You asked the question about how do you have a conversation if there is a candidate that doesn't want to public. You might call your lawyer and said, I need you to have a conversation with that person and see what will flush that candidate out, whether that candidate's interested in pursuing that. You see that with coaches all the time. You won't have anyone to give you a private plane as OSU does, but you do that. I was safety director, so I've been in the public sector over police and fire. I've been assistant city attorney in both Cleveland and Columbus. I've been general counsel for the National FOP since '01. I've dealt with various government entities for all of my life. The last fiasco that went to the Supreme Court with the shooting in the University of Cincinnati police officer. We represented Hamilton County prosecutor in that case on the public records. You have the issue of trying to maintain confidences. You have the issue of the press that's going to be there and the lights running and trying to get it right. I've lived in that space. The one thing I learned a long time ago, Columbus is saturated with very competent, capable lawyers. Every now and then you need value add. That's what we bring to the table. We've been in that space. The auditor you asked about defending, we have defended the public school system over the years. When Ron Etheridge was here, and for you all who were around, I was the lawyer that went through the midnight raids, and I told the superintendent at that time, don't do it that way. If you do that, you're going to get crucified and we're going to end up losing. But, the question you ask yourself, if a client gives you direction, we give you advice, you can tell us to pound salt, you can follow it, you can modify it, and always say to the client, tell me where you want to go and how fast you want to get there. And let's see if we can walk you through this minefield without you blowing up. That's the way we approach it. I've represented Madison Township since '92. I say it's the old Norman Rockwell form of government. And if you haven't been to township meetings and things of that sort, you have not seen democracy at work. You have an idea. We said we could do it for $3 1/4. That's what our normal rates are. We would do it on a monthly. But here's the issue that we would want to know. You've just been through a search. You have a contract with that search firm, $50,000 as I understand it. The question is, are they still obligated to deliver a candidate if they continue? And is that money you can save? Their record of superintendents that they have actually placed who've lasted 5 years is 85%. So they have a pretty good track record. I don't know who you might be looking at. Are you starting with a new search firm? Are you going to tee that one up? There are a number of questions we would have to turn. I mean, a search is pretty simple. You get the search firm, they have the criteria. I assume your criteria is not going to change. You've got that. Then it's a matter of putting dates. If you want to have this done by the fall when school starts, if you want to have it, that's kind of a tight schedule. The one thing you ask on the search firm is, are they restricted of going after any of the candidates that they've placed? So there are a number of nuances that you can look at as you go through this process. Been there, done that. We represent a number of government entities. The auditor, question about litigation. I mean, obviously state court, federal court, we've done it all. We're in the middle of the marijuana litigation. We lead counsel on that. We're defending the state on the Department of Disabilities, federal district court. We've got that, and we've got a few other major cases going as well. So that doesn't alarm us. The press doesn't alarm us. So it's an opportunity to try to assist, if you're going to use the old search firm or a new search firm, sitting down, talking to them, figuring out what's going to change this time around. And then dealing with the issues that you have on the public records, the open meetings and things of that sort. I've known David Yost forever. We were together in the administration of Buck Reinhardt. I worked with him when he was auditor at Delaware County. I worked with him when he was prosecutor, sometimes on the same team, sometimes on a different team. I worked with him and Ron O'Brien on 3 major public issues. I was on the other side of that issue. We worked it out. So it just depends on what your nuances are. If I were to look and you say, I want to go through a search and have it done by the time school starts, again, that's just a matter of taking the calendar, marking it out, saying, you're going to have your kickoff meeting for your search. Who are going to be your stakeholders? How are they going to participate in that process? Are they going to have input? If so, how? Are you going to have a board-only team? Are you going to diversify that team? Develop search strategies, finalize position specifications, market outreach, sourcing, profile of the particular candidates. If they're going to nail those candidates down to 10 and then bring them to you, or are they going to be 5 or 3? And then the question is, how do you then go through the vetting process of that? It's pretty straightforward. I'm here to answer any questions. I don't need a half an hour. I mean, I think you all know me. We know how to do this. And you're going to, I think the thing about the consistency of the quality of the advice becomes extremely important, and the nuances. And I think the other thing is we bring credibility. I mean, we've represented folks, and we've represented folks who, with the 6 o'clock and the 11 o'clock and above the fold and the front page or the Metro section. So I'll answer any questions you want. Chris is here, and he'll tell you, we do work 24/7. Come Friday, there are 2 work days left in the week.
Well, somebody does.
No, he will tell you. He's there with me on Saturdays and
I
Sundays.
know.
And the other, and, you know, John Albert has represented this district forever on any number of different types of litigation. But, you know, there are technical lawyers and technical abilities, and then there's a value added. So, what questions do you have?
Committee members, Mr. Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. President. Looking at your proposal, what is the difference between 5,000 and 10,000? So,
It just depends on how tight the situation is, the demand of time. So if you're looking at a traditional, 5,000 is more than enough. If you're talking about hours, you know, like 10 hours a month or 15 hours a month, you know, however you want to set that down. If you decide, you know, we are that firm that you want to bring in, we'll sit down and we'll look at you. You can project out the normal amount of times you would take. This one got a little bit, how do we say it, discombobulated. But I think the idea is, look, if you're going to have a 5-month process or 6 months and you say $5,000 a month, that's $30,000. And you put in all you need to do is back out the hours. So what I was trying to say to you, let's sit down and look at, depending on where you want to go with the search firm, how in-depth you want us to be in that process. If you're going to use the old firm, it's pretty easy. If you're not going to use, okay. All right, good.
RFP out.
Okay, got it. And okay, then that, you know, sitting down with them, you know, local knowledge becomes extremely important. Local knowledge that's what it's all about. And again, I don't know, again, you know, looking at those RFPs or RFQs, however they are, sitting down, looking at the qualifications, you can go online as we did with the firm and find all the information, where they've been, their success rate on placing, the number of years that their placements have stayed with the district. You know, this firm, they placed the Arlington superintendent. He's been there. He's got superintendent of the year. So, but
Other questions from committee members? All right, board members, colleagues, questions for Mr. James?
Yeah, so,
Yes,
tell
Ms.
me about a time you've had a difficult time with the board. I'm consistent, this
You know,
is my
she's-
question. This is my question. So, yeah, just,
I think the idea, you're always subject to having 1 or 2 board members that have a different philosophy. Whether it's how you're financing something or doing something. I try to, you know, I think integrity is extremely important, and I think consistency is extremely important. You cannot insult me, okay? You know, so I've always had an open door policy when I was safety director, and I used to say to the rank and file, you can come in, you can cuss me out, you can disagree with me, but when we leave, let's be on the same page. So what I would say to the board members, and we just went through a really difficult situation on a capital expenditure with one of my clients, where I had one board member that was just insane rabbit. He'd call me, you know, 4 or 5 days, he'd consult with other lawyers, tell me how stupid and dumb I was and how much he disagreed. I said, well, you know, this is my opinion. I think you just have to stay on course. I think the problem comes when the entire body gets poisoned and you're crippled and you can't do anything. And that's what I think counsel's job is, to try to at least minimize that and working with the individual. And we got through it. It was funny because I thought with the election and the change of the board composition, I was going to be fired. And he's the one that called and said, you know, we would like you to take over all of the representation of the district. You know, you have a difficult job to do. I think you spend quality time. And one of the things I did now when I said, look, let's you and I meet. Let's at least, so we're not wasting each other's time. If you believe you have a different, you want me to put something in writing to you, personal confidential, I knew he was going to go and share it with some other lawyers. Tell me if I'm wrong. But your issues are a lot more than just legal. You know, you have some really difficult challenges and, you know, so, does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Vice President?
Thank you again, Mr. President. We have some unique stakeholders at the table. Can you give us an example of how you've worked with other stakeholders like ESC, like a mediator, for example, in this type of process or something similar?
Well, believe you me, representing the National FOP mediation, there's a, you know, and, you know, I would say that it isn't usually, I remember when Ferguson hit, and I got the call, and my wife and my sister, and we were trying to, this is kind of a sidebar, they wanted to shoot me, and I said, wait a minute, let's get through this, and we met with the community leadership, and we kind of said, here's the reality that's going to unfold. You can't control all the negativity, because when that lie runs around, it's 3/4 around the world before you can catch it. But I think you try to convene those stakeholders, whether, you know, it depends on what areas and issues you're dealing with. If it's the clergy, is it the city of Columbus, who might have some ideas when they want to put some money in, when they have input, is how do you bridge? How do you bridge? I would say you just look at it, you sit down, you take out your pen, you know, these are the personalities, these are the characters. How do you bring them into the fold? If you can. But you can't stop trying. I just think that's, and you know, that's where it gets labor intensive. It isn't the legal stuff, it's the personalities and the culture that requires that time of investment. And you have to be comfortable. You can't worry about, okay, who am I gonna upset? I mean, I will say this, you have to know who you can't piss off. You know, because if you don't know that, then you're gonna step on the landmine. But I would welcome the opportunity to work with you, but you know, I mean, there are folks that I think get this. I think cultural competence is extremely important. You have a very diverse population. You have a very diverse city. You have very strong opinions. I can't tell you how many times I had dinner with John F. Wolfe about this district, and it was not pretty. It was not pretty. And, you know, sometimes we agreed, sometimes we didn't, and but, you know, that's those relationships that you have to work.
Other questions from board members? All right, well, you didn't need half an hour, did you?
No, sir, I think, you know, look, again, in 83 to 86, I was almost trying a lawsuit a month in state or federal court. And I remember the last 2 cases I tried for this company. And one, I blackboarded a number, and that's what the jury came back. 2 weeks later, I got fired. And I remember, and this was the height of affirmative action. I said, geez, you know, I'm a black guy, I'm good, I've done wonders for you, how can you fire me? They said, we found someone to do our work for $125 an hour. And what you begin to understand, again in Columbus is saturated by very competent, capable lawyers, and the parts are pretty much exchangeable, except in certain instances. This is one of those instances.
All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. James. Thank you, Mr. Green.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
See you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night. Thank you for being here, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, I believe that leaves the Taft Law Firm.
Yes, it does.
So if there are representatives of the Taft Law Firm, please come to the table.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Nice and chilly.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
All right, so.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening. You have half an hour. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Janika Pierce-Tucker. I'm here with Rita McNeil-Danish. I am a partner in the Columbus office, as you see with our materials, and we are delighted to be here tonight. I think I'm going to try to bring in some of the questions that have been asked to try to shorten the night, because I know it's been a long day for you all. First, let me say that I think that one thing that we pride ourselves on is our relationship with our clients. And what I say by that is that for me, I represent, TAF represents a collective number of school boards as well as public sector clients who, you know, the hours are not 8 to 5. I can tell you on many occasions, you know, I know when the first day of school is coming. The phone rings at 6:30, 7 o'clock, you know, things like that, because I think that part of this, what I think you should appreciate is that you have to be accessible, especially in a time like this when you are conducting a search for a superintendent. You have a lot of factors that are coming at you in terms of the media, in terms of the stakeholders, in terms of accountability. And so I think that it's very important that your legal team is accessible to you at all times so that you can talk things through, hopefully before you have to then get in front of a camera to say something about what's going on. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we pride ourselves on is accessibility, because our experience definitely is exemplified in the materials, but we are fortunate to have members on our team who we have tried to put together this team that goes directly to the expertise you're looking for as relates to the proposal. As I said, I kind of do the day-to-day things, so I deal with all things as relates to school law, from open meetings to placement to special education to terminations to also just dealing with governance issues as relates to boards. And then when you have Adam Miller, who has, so he's currently a state representative, but he also serves as our education person in Columbus and does a lot of day-to-day activities. And I will let Rita definitely introduce herself and talk about her enormous expertise in this area. But also we have Carolyn Davis, who works along with me, who kind of works directly with school boards. So I think that we definitely have the expertise to fulfill the needs as relates to what has been asked of us. As it relates to our fees, I think we worked really hard to try to understand what is more than likely expected of us, because I suspect that you will want to hit the ground running. We try to appreciate that and kind of give a fee structure that kind of gives an idea of there's going to be boots on the ground and we're going to be moving fast. And so to kind of give an idea of what we expect up front. Definitely we can have a conversation if that is not ideal or we need to adjust that. We're open to that, but we understand that there's going to be a lot of meetings and it's hard and it can get very expensive. I think when you're trying to do all what is needed to be done in the time frame and be cost efficient. So that's kind of why we laid out the fee structure in the way that we did. I'll turn it over to Rita for her to introduce herself.
Thank you very much. As Janika indicated, my name is Rita McNeil-Danish, and I am a partner at TAF as well. Many people say, well, what do you do? And I say, it's not what I do, it's where I do it. My entire practice is in the government space. And that is because I have a background that is both public and private sector, but primarily in the public sector. I was city attorney for the city of Cincinnati, city attorney for the city of Dayton, Ohio, and city attorney in Greensboro, North Carolina. As Mr. James indicated, there's added value. What I like to say is my added value is I have lived and breathed in the shoes that you stand in. I've not been a board member, but as a city attorney, I've had to deal with that 5 minutes before the meeting is calling for something. Or 5 minutes after the meeting, you receive a lawsuit and you've got to be in court in the morning because you've got a TRO and you've got to respond. So what I say is my added value is I have lived and breathed the issues related to open meetings, to public records, and to crisis management, as well as executive search processes. And so I think that the team that Janika and I bring to you, in addition to the others that we list, is one that is pragmatic, it is practical, and believes that it's a partnership in the work that we do. I will respond to one of the questions, and that says, so how do you deal with a board when you're going to have to deal with issues and personalities? And it starts with respect. And the respect starts with me, and then it begins in terms of the advice I give you, the consistency of that advice, the transparency of that advice, and that advice that is successful at the end. And that is what you do. You build that respect one by one, person by person. And so I have had instances where I've had challenging, I will say, council members. Those who follow Cincinnati City Council will know that we've had our challenges. On the private side, I've had challenging clients. I still represent municipalities and do crisis management, and I had a client in Cincinnati, not the city, that I was very much involved in the search process as well as crisis management that involved media releases, dealing with the search process, speaking to the media, dealing with the public records issues, and trying to be successful at the end. So for me, I have actually done it. Boots on the ground, if you will. I've actually had the real life experience, and not to minimize anyone else's experience, but as I say, it's the reality is when I first became a city attorney, I remember when I first got the job and I said, hey, I'm a lawyer. Anybody can do it, right? And there's something very special to open meetings, to public sector, to public records. And until you've lived it and breathed it and had to do it on the spot and understand the nuances, it's very different. Cincinnati has been one of the most litigious cities in this state in the area of public records and has made most of the law. I will tell you that I was city solicitor at the time that many of those cases came through. So what I bring to you, I believe, is an expertise both on the public and on the private side, because I recognize the value, but I have a heart for public sector, which is why I say to people, it's not what I do, it's where I do it. Because even though I'm not in the public sector any longer, I have a love for it, I have a passion for it, and I understand the things that matter. I understand that there are economics very much involved. I understand that there's transparency very much involved. You don't have transparency, you're going to find yourself in trouble, because everything in the dark will come to the light eventually. And then I also understand that it's a partnership, and you have to understand and respect that everybody comes to the table with their own vision, their own perspective, and you've got to marshal that and get everybody to the end with that same successful achievement of whatever the end goal is. So that's just a little bit about what I do.
All right. Questions from committee members, Mr. Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much for being here and joining us this evening. And thank you for your very passionate description of exactly how you work and what your ethos and your approach is. Two questions. One is, you talked about marshaling opinion, marshaling how we work together and how you come to a result. How would you include the mediator and Dr. Tomball, ESC in that process?
From my perspective, they have a very equal role, if you will, in terms of that marshaling. So when you talk about respect for opinions and visions and the things that matter to them, then you have to factor that in and recognize, as you are coming together for that common vision, common goal, you got to know what matters to everybody so you can actually get to the win-win, if you will. So their perspective, their opinion, what matters to them will be equally important, no less, because you'll have to have their consideration and input as well.
Okay. And the other piece is there's been a lot of discussion between the board and prospective council on a lot of the proactive measures.
Yes.
And much of your proposals are designed around that.
Yes.
But how, again, if we did walk into a situation where we need your defense expertise, how does that impact bottom line to this proposal? how do we work that out above and beyond just bottom line?
You know, as we were preparing this proposal, we kind of tried to read a little bit between the lines and appreciate that when you're talking about, asking about contract negotiations and things of that nature that can possibly lead to litigation. So I think that not understanding all of the dynamics that are in play, but I will say that we definitely have the expertise in litigation. I practice both every day, day to day, but also litigation. And I think that that is helpful because not only do I bring to the table the ability to understand the underlying law, but also to then advocate for that position. As it relates to, I think you talked about receiving a letter from the auditor. Well, we have definitely received those letters and advocated for clients on our behalf, on their behalf as it relates to that. So that doesn't present an issue for us, and we understand that there's a couple of different issues that may be at play here that would require us to take a more defensive approach versus a proactive approach, and we're prepared to do that. As it relates to the cost, I think that one thing that we try to do is think about we have a candid conversation, and that means, does this arise out of this proposal? Does this what we're dealing with and what we're responding to, does it arise out of this proposal? If it does, we have proposed a fee agreement that we can talk through. If we feel like, okay, this is another piece of litigation that is outside of that, then I think we have a conversation. But at the same time, I think that we understand, we have represented public sector clients, so we also understand that no, you don't pay the rates of Fortune 500 companies, nor do we expect that. But we are prepared to work with you to make sure that we get a good solution.
Thank you.
Other questions? Board members?
I know Shauna has a question.
I do.
Ms. Gibbs?
I have a question and a statement. I think a successful search means we're nowhere close to litigation. That we have received great counsel and we've received guidance. We've received caution at a point where we are getting ready to maybe make a wrong decision or action. And that the idea of litigation means we totally discounted everything our very capable counsels provided us. And so litigation to me would be the total failure of this hire. And that the reason we are doing it is so that we're nowhere close. We're not getting another letter from the auditor because we have the best minds in the room. And because of the complexities of it, our in-house counsel cannot serve in that role. And so we need this position to support the board and to merely, we don't need them to run the search, but merely advise us on where we need to go and the actions that will keep us legal for less, like a commercial. But I'm gonna ask you, and I think people have misrepresented or maybe not understood the question about the difficulty. I'm not applying the difficulty of just working with a board. Just tell me about a difficult situation of working with a board in general, or whether it was the client, somebody we are hiring, and they're being difficult. Tell me about a time where you encountered a difficulty in one of these practices. How did you approach it, and what was your vision of a successful resolution? And did that person share your vision of successful resolution?
So I can say that I will speak to, I have the pleasure of representing quite a number of rural school boards. So what that presents is maybe, I will be candid, sometimes they bring issues to the table that maybe I don't necessarily agree with personally, but I also understand that, okay, this is what the position of the board. However, I think as a couple of people have mentioned, you usually have a couple of board members that you have 2 in a camp, 3 in a camp, and you have to figure out where the middle ground is. And so my approach has always been that I pride myself in listening. And so what that means is I may have to have coffee with you, lunch with you, but we're going to have a conversation. And I'm going to hear some things that you need to say, and I'm going to hopefully provide some feedback to you. But I think that what I have done in those difficult situations is try to listen to everyone and then figure out where we can come to the middle. If I feel as though the middle is not reachable, okay, then what's the next best thing? And then you start having conversations. And I'm very, I believe that you have to be open. So part of that is what I'm telling you, I'm not going to be shy and not tell the next person, because I think that that has allowed me, that has been successful for me in how to navigate those situations. Success, I would say in the particular instance I'm talking about, it was a termination of a superintendent. It was 3 members of the board wanted that superintendent gone, 4 of them did not. And it was going to come to a meeting where they were inviting all of the community to come in and basically express how they felt about the superintendent. And for me, it was just making sure that the board acted in accordance with the law, so that however it fell, that it wasn't coming back on the board. It was coming back on, they followed the process. Not everybody was happy, right? Because either he was there or he was not. And so for me, that I have to understand what my role is, but at the same time, making sure that I listen and understand and appreciate that everyone has a voice and a reason to be at the table.
And that you define success, actually. We define our success based upon what you have defined success as. I often say to my clients, my role is to give you the benefit of my wisdom and advice. You make the business decision, and then we roll with it. And we have to go and we have to move forward. And if everything fails and we end up in litigation, it won't be, I told you so. It's just, let's do what we got to do. But that's a different kind of situation. But we like to think that you define the success and that we are with you, a partner in that success.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? All right, well, thank you.
Very thorough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The benefits of being in the room.
One more quick question.
Would you two be the primaries?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah,
So
we tried to set it up so that you would meet the 2 primary folks of contact, so that, and our goal, and I think want to add that, is that we try to, because we recognize there may be lots of meetings and you may not get the privilege of seeing one of us, but what we do in our files is we keep copious notes so that there's not this whole, okay, let me bring you up to speed, just read where we are, this is what I need you to do, if we have to send someone in our stead. But that's what we try to do, come here to make sure you interacted with the folks that you would contact with on a daily basis.
And that would be the exception, not the norm. You would have one of the 2 of us. And I don't know if you can tell in the course, but we're kind of yin and yang in terms of working together. So we work really well together. We have a good team. And so that's what
Thank you,
get.
ladies. Thank you very much. We'll be in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you for being here.
President Baker, could we have a quick break?
Let's take a quick recess. We'll be back in 10 minutes, if no one objects.